Are we hitting a recession? I feel like I've talked about this so many times. Recession.
2 years straight we've been talking about
2 years
this.
straight. It's an interesting time that we've been in because it just feels like
The recession that never was a recession.
fundamentally,
Technically,
like all
it's
the
been
red
a recession.
flags point that it should be. What's going on right now is just recently the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, recently went up. So basically what that means is inflation has gone up from a year ago. So the Federal Reserve Bank, Jerome Powell, has been trying to fight inflation and bring it down to 2%. That's his goal. That's been his goal from the beginning. It's still his goal. And everyone thought by March they're gonna, start doing rate cuts, but still no rate cuts.
Didn't they say like in the beginning of the year or the December, like at least 6 rate cuts?
Yeah, throughout the whole year there'll be 6 rate cuts, but I doubt that's gonna happen.
And the first one's supposed to be in March.
Yeah, it's not happening.
No.
I don't think it's happening, but it'd be crazy if it does happen. But especially because if anything, there might be a rate increase because inflation is going up.
Yeah, because they've done so much, they've held rates this high for such a long time and it's still going up, that just shows that their job technically isn't done and they need to put more pressure.
Think of it as like someone choking someone and they're choking them and they still can't die. Like, I gotta choke them harder,
Yeah.
Until finally, okay, inflation's down. There you go.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like, and a lot of people think, oh, it's only 3%, Yes. But, or it only went up from the previous month 0.5, but times that by 12 months, you're talking about 6% interest rate overall throughout the year. So it's not like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. It's actually a very bad deal. And if stocks are going all time high, Bitcoin's going all time high, meme stocks are going all time high. People are spending still like never before. It's like if they cut rates, inflation's just like what happened with Volcker. He cut rates, or I don't know if it was Volcker, but the Fed cut rates way too fast, and they first had a spike and they cut way too fast, and they had an even bigger inflation spike. So that's one thing he doesn't want to repeat because it made a disaster, and we lost almost 10 years where the market, was horrible, housing was horrible, jobs was horrible. So they don't want to do that. So I feel like they feel the pressure. And I think now they're predicting maybe 2.6 cuts of rates. It dropped after the report came out because I don't know. And it might be 0 cuts. I think there's going to be 0 cuts.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy time because when you hear like, oh, inflation only went up 1%, 2% or whatever, 0.5%. But like realistically, I'll ask you guys, right now, like for example, there's this article that said home buyers need to earn 80% more to afford a home than in 2022. This was just 4 years ago. Have you gotten an 80% raise within those last 4 years?
Here's
Hell
1%
no.
raise.
Yeah.
Most jobs. Here's
Hell
2%
no.
raise.
Here's another 25 cents more an hour.
Yeah.
And that's just a house, renting, buying a car, everything. Ask yourself, groceries, is it really cheaper? Gas is the only thing that has gone down a little, but historically looking where it was before, like 2019, it's still a little higher. And there's a lot of reports. I'll just go through them so you guys can see where we are right now. Goldman Sachs is a huge company, and they said they looked back 16 years, and they looked at the housing crash of 2008. And they looking that right now, affordability is even worse than where it was in 2008. Worse than 2008. Another one that's crazy is another company that they do a lot of, they have a lot of statistics, graphs, and information about the economy and whatever. They're called Challenger. And they said that layoffs have rise to the highest for any February since 2009. So that's what I mean when I say fundamentally, a lot of things are happening. Yeah. But why is it that the government, especially Joe Biden, is saying our economy is stronger than ever? Jobs are bigger than ever because they don't report that number one, a lot of those jobs are government jobs. Number two is a lot of those jobs are people taking on a second job or like a gig job like Uber, Lyft, stuff like that. And it's like they're also, obviously, election year is coming. They're not going to want to sound like we're in a terrible place, even though we are.
Well, because if you listen to what he's saying, he's technically isn't wrong. He says, look at where it was in 2020. Yeah.
Because of COVID.
Everyone lost their job. So, yeah, technically, he's not lying, technically.
Yeah.
But also, it's not being honest when you're saying, like, job records are through the roof. You ask anyone, how do you feel, how you were 5-6 years ago, how you feel now? Even like 4 or 5 years ago, you tell them, it's like, man, I'm still have my job, but it just feels like I can't move up in life. I feel like I still have crazy high bills. I would love to buy a house, but it looks like it's getting worse and worse. And with interest rates not coming down, no cuts, it's like, well, that means I can't afford a house with these high interest rates. So what's the point? Or people that bought a house wishing that or expecting, they're like, oh, there's going to be 6 rate cuts next year. Imagine all those people. And they're probably like,
yeah, the average mortgage in 2020 was roughly $2,000. The average mortgage in 2023 was $4,342 in Orange County.
Yeah.
And this is Orange County, so California data. So it was the average mortgage was $2,000, and it more than doubled in just 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then there's a stat here. This guy on X, he posted how the saving that we had in crazy in 2020, 21. If you see here, we went crazy high, but now we're officially hitting negative territory of people's savings. Excessive savings are starting to drop. But how long would this last? Because at the end of the day, they can go on credit card and keep racking that up. But yeah, the excessive spending that we got from stimulus checks and everything, majority of the people have already spent it all. So,
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to be in the next 6 months,
Yeah, I don't know. I know that, I just feel like, 2008, people started spotting it in 2004, 2005. It took 3 or 4 years to finally, something had to give. And I feel like something similar is happening where there's so much like, Bitcoin's hitting almost 100,000. Meta is going like Nvidia, all these crazy stocks that are just like, it's not even normal growth. It's like parabolic growth where it's like, that's not normal. It can't sustain itself for the long term. Houses that went like this that were selling for 500-600, now $1 million.
Well, it just shows you that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And that's why here in Avanza Latino, we tell people like the importance of investing, you know, because like you could depend on your job, you could depend on saving and all that. But if you're not investing in the stock market, that's why majority of the people that are wealthy, they put a lot of their money into the stock market because they know that the government's going to print money. They know that we're going to go through these downtimes. But if you keep your money in stuff that are going to grow in value, like technology, especially we're going through this AI boom, and those companies are actually producing stuff that are actually making an impact. That's how your money can grow. Like there's this chart here that explains, the last 30 years. So this is a guy named Charlie on X. He posted here, over the last 30 years, the purchasing power of the US dollar has been cut in half due to inflation. At the same time, the S&P 500 has gained 840%, averaging around 7.8% per year once adjusted after adjustment for inflation. So if you look at this chart here, if you aren't investing, if you are just saving your money, those aren't going to help you. You have to invest into the market. And we're not telling you to go into risky stocks. Just invest into the S&P 500, open a Roth IRA, because to be honest, that's the only way that if you can keep up with inflation. As we see here, the inflation keeps going up. The only way you can fight that is you can try to work longer hours, but if you don't figure out a way to invest into the market, you're going to always be lagging. And I think it's only going to get worse, because the dollar is going to lose more of its value. And if they can't control inflation, assets are going to keep going higher and higher. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah. Instead of allowing these banks and other companies, because with credit cards, it's at the highest, over $1 trillion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Become rich off of compound interest because they're charging crazy, 26-27% interest on your credit. Excuse me. On your credit cards, you could do that in your investments instead and make compound interest work for you instead of against you.
Yeah, it's like right now credit cards on averaging around 21%. So also pay off that credit card. I know we say that a lot. Pay off that credit card because you're literally just giving the bank your money. So I don't know. Like this is the longest streak. Like the one thing that people say, okay, the one thing that is holding strong is unemployment. I think that's what's holding. That's why people are making money left and right in the stock market, because they have extra money. They have a job. And as long as they have a job, they're able to still, even though it sucks, they're still be able to pay everything that they need to survive month after month. This is one of the longest streaks that we've had unemployment below 4%. We've had higher. We've had 35, we had 27, but we're currently in third place of 25. So we could still have continue for another, 10 to 12 more months of unemployment being sticky at this percent. But I think it went up a little bit. I don't know if you saw it. It went from 3.4 to I think in January it moved up to 3.9. So we're getting close. And if you see here, like we don't stay below that long, and eventually, you know, unemployment goes up, and we haven't seen that in a while. So if we're hitting at a point where we don't see this staying for a long time, and I do see it. Like if I'm being honest, my personal business, it does seem like it's slowing. I don't know how it is for you. Like I still have work, but not like how I had in 2020. I'm 2021 when we opened back up. Things were crazy. So it does feel like business is slowing, but it's not slowing to the point that it feels like we're in a crash.
Yeah, obviously the election, a lot of things are gonna have to do with it. We just won't know. All you need is that like there could be 9 out of the 10 things going are on fire. You just need that one last thing, unemployment, because you know people lose their jobs, they lose their houses, they lose their cars, they lose everything, and that's where everything goes to financial crisis like 2008.
Yeah, and one thing I want to talk about is about Jerome Powell. You have to pay attention to what he says, because I know TV that says
more than the president, more than anyone else.
Everyone, you know, everyone, even stock investors, they don't really look at the stock as much as what is Jerome Powell going to say? What is the Fed going to do? And if you pay attention to what he's been saying over the last year or two, he says average inflation of 2% over a long period of time. He doesn't specify what long period, but most people don't remember from 2008 to 2020, we struggled to have inflation at least at 2%. We were negative. We were below 1% at some points. And then out of nowhere, we hit inflation of almost, 9%? So if you're hitting a target, you know, I heard someone on YouTube talk about this. If you're trying to hit a target of 2%, and for the past 10 years, you've been hitting 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, your average is not 2. Your average is below that. And then out of nowhere, you hit an inflation rate of, 8 or 9. Then your average starts going a little bit higher. So if they're trying to reach inflation of an average 2%, that doesn't mean that interests are going to cut as soon as it hits 2%. They want to see 2% consistent for a long period of time. Who knows how long that period's going to be? And I think that's one thing that everyone is waiting. 2%? Are they going to cut? They're going to cut. Wait, they're not cutting? Why are they cutting? I thought we hit 2%. He said it. Average inflation of 2% over time. So I think once you understand that, in my opinion, we're staying at this interest rates for a while. Or like what Joshua said, he might have to raise it to try to fight this inflation, because things are getting hot and it doesn't look like they're coming down, and if he cuts, we're going back up to, crazy money being thrown in the stock markets. Like right now, people in crypto world are making so much money.
Yeah, and it's a snowball effect. The economy works in so many ways. This morning I saw an article about a local school district, Anaheim School District. They're firing a lot of teachers.
Really?
A lot of first-year teachers, because their kids... So two things. So that's why there's a lot of things that affect that eventually will catch up to us. There's a huge decline in student attendance or enrollment for two reasons. Number one, people are having less kids. So like the small, like elementary, preschool, there's a lot less kids, but they have the same amount of teachers. So obviously they have to fire a lot of them, because it's a waste of money. They get money from the government according to how many kids they have. And then secondly, a lot of families cannot afford houses in Anaheim. So where are they moving? Farther and further and further and further out, which is only going to eventually catch up to us, whether a recession comes this year or next year or whenever. Eventually, it's because of people not having enough kids, because the housing is just so expensive, or cost of living. Naturally, something will have to give. Yeah. And that's one school district. Other school districts are facing similar situations where enrollment dropped by a lot. And I'm talking not like 100 kids. I'm talking thousands. I know a district that went from...
Is it because they just moved?
Kids moved, people are having less kids.
Oh.
Families are moving and people are having less kids. One district I know went from like 15,000 enrollment in the whole district to only 10,000.
Whoa.
That's 5,000 in only like 3 or 4 years. Why? Because people are having less kids, and because it's so expensive to, live in those areas, especially here in LA County. So people are leaving the state and then leaving the county. So they're going outer and outer and outer.
And I think I saw a stat that a lot of people are doing, what's it called? From home? Study from home, or school from home? What's it called? The school from home. People don't go to school; they just teach from school. What's that called?
What Dreamer wants to do?
Homeschool.
Huh?
Homeschooling.
Yeah.
Homeschooling went up a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that that's.
I didn't think about that.
Good.
Yeah, if there's less kids being born, that means schools are gonna shrink.
Yeah, and it's not because it charter schools. It's because literally people. Why are people having less kids? Because it's expensive.
Yeah,
it's expensive.
It's like my parents had 4, but if you look at their parents, my grandpa from my
10.
mom and dad's side, 12, 10. You know,
we're not.
And
even
sometimes they might have 2 or 3 spouses.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so, I don't think I'll have 4, maybe 2, maybe 3, but 2.
Yeah,
because
it's expensive. And
yeah.
also because both, if you want to survive, you both have to work. You can't just be at home all day.
It's tough. I mean, eventually the goal is that they work, but even then, like buying a house, like all these things where it's like, I don't know. I just feel like something's got to give because eventually we're gonna get a breaking point where no one can afford any house at all, not even middle class, and no one at all. And then,
well, they benefit. They benefit because if you're officially a renter, I think that's how it is in Europe. Majority of people are renters; they're not really homeowners. And the people that own the house, they love that. The banks or the big institutions. So at the end of the day, they benefit from this. The big people. But one thing that I wanted to talk about is stocks are all-time high, Bitcoin's all-time high, all this housing is all-time high, but like really smart money or really famous people like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. I think this morning Mark Zuckerberg sold another million. I forgot to even screenshot it. When I was driving over here, I saw Mark Zuckerberg show another shares of his stock, like a couple million. So Jeff Bezos has sold 8.5 billion of his Amazon stock. Why would he sell? Isn't this going to go higher? Mark Zuckerberg sells 428 million of his Meta stock. Isn't Meta going to go higher, especially with his ban? Jamie Dimon, he sells 150 million. And do you know when was the last time these 3 sold? At the top of 2020.
2020, yeah.
So that's one thing that a lot of people
Recession.
are like, do these guys know? Or they're just selling because...
Jamie Dimon keeps saying we're going to hit a recession.
He does. He keeps going on news. He's like, the inflation, the recession is still pretty high.
Yeah, so I don't know, guys. There's just a lot. We're just ordinary guys here that have just regular jobs, do regular things. But we're trying to bring this into very digestible things. That way you guys can go ahead and take this back with you.
Yeah. And one quote that I want to end with, this guy, Dean Phillips.
He lost.
He lost?
He's out of the race no more. He's not running as a Democrat no more.
I just saw one of his tweets. I guess it was going popular right now. And it says, money is like manure. If you stack it up, it stinks. But if you spread it out, it fertilizes. And I think that's super important, because like invest in stocks. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to listen to all those people that are on social media telling you to invest, financial advisors. Just follow the greatest stock investor of our time, Nancy Pelosi. I don't want to pick on her, but it's just such a funny name. She recently has made 100% gains on an investment she made 103 days. If someone told you in 103 days you're able to make this much money, listen to our politicians. They understand the power of investing, just like what she does every day.
Yeah, so it's super important that if they're doing it, if they're investing, don't just hear it from us. Obviously, the importance of investing, invest your money, and just like that quote says, spread it across. Diversify that investment. Now, what you invest in, that's up to you. That's where you talk to your financial advisors. You make that decision yourself, or you hire someone to help you do that. At the end of the day, just start investing, figure it out, educate yourself. You got this, and whether we have a recession or not, if you do all the things like save your money, spread it out, you're prepared for any opportunity. You won't care if houses go down in price, especially if you're a homeowner. You'll be like, great, I can go buy another house maybe.
Yeah.
Or, refinance and get a better, put an ADU in the back, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we'll leave you guys with that. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Please be sure to comment below. Let us know if there's any other topics or anything else you want us to cover. We'll see you in the next one.